The greatest test of missional conviction is financial pressure. And the financial pressure of all of these Fortune 500 companies pulling all of their money out of your platform and saying the only way they're coming back is if you change a core aspect of your mission in order to appease their interests. That is the greatest pressure you're going to face on whether or not you actually believe in your mission. Elon Musk and the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, is being boycotted by all kinds of gigantic Fortune 500 companies like Disney and IBM and Microsoft and all of these companies that represent millions and millions of dollars in ad revenue to the site. And they're boycotting based off of research done by Media Matters, which is quite obviously a very partisan company against conservative type media. And they put together what Elon Musk believes is a very biased and untrue report. And in response, millions and millions of dollars have left the platform. Recently, Elon was asked about this in an interview, and he gave a response that shocked everyone.
What was that trip like? And obviously, you know that there's a public perception that, and you're clarifying this now, but there's a public perception that that was part of a apology tour, if you will.
Now he's talking about Elon Musk going over to Israel. Now Musk did put out a tweet that he had to come back and apologize for and explain that a lot of people read as anti-Semitic. Now he was pointing it at people like the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, who on the outside try to speak for the Jewish community, but are ultimately huge proponents against free speech. And so he had to come back and clarify that. And even later in this interview, he does apologize for that tweet. But because he went over to Israel, a lot of people said, this is just an apology tour. So here's how the conversation continues.
This had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go yourself.
This is obviously what sent the whole world into pandemonium, is on this stage, Elon Musk says to go F yourself.
But
go yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask you then.
So Bob is a reference to Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney. And Disney is, of course, one of the people who are boycotting his platform. Now, Elon Musk bought Twitter and then rebranded it to X specifically to push forward free speech, which is the cornerstone of our democracy. It's the First Amendment. It is the right that supports all of the other rights. It's how we ultimately make decisions. It's how we get good ideas and bad ideas and bring them into the public square and allow the educated populace to wrestle through them freely in order to land on the best ideas to push our nation forward. And we get rid of free speech at our peril, because when there's not free speech, speech is determined by whoever takes power. And now there is no longer good incentives to try and be in leadership so you can represent and support. Now there are perverse incentives, which there already are because of lobbyists and corporate donors and all the things. But now there is an even greater perverse interest to try and gain authority, because you are now the person who gets to decide speech. And we've got the books on this, right? You can read 1984 and see this is just an absolute terrible idea. And he saw the massive censorship on Twitter, and the Twitter files exposed that down the road after he actually got there. And what we see is that this is a mission from him. And I'm reading Musk's biography right now. This is a missional person. And he talks about everything. He talks about SpaceX. He talks about Tesla. He talks about his solar company. He talks about the Boring Company. And he talks about Twitter, now known as X. He talks about all of it as if it is like a divine mission. And this is what makes great leaders, is they have a huge, audacious vision. What Jim Collins, the great business writer, says is a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. They put it out in front of them, and they're able to talk about it with so much clarity and so much vision, so much foresight, that it rallies people to their cause. And he's done this again and again and again. And he does have this deep conviction about Twitter as well. And he is not going to apologize for having this sense of clarity, and he's not going to be blackmailed. In other words, he's not going to allow corporate money or anyone's money for that matter to get him off mission. He sees this whole thing as a bit of a conspiracy put together by Media Matters. Here's an article from the Post. Elon Musk's ex follows through with a thermonuclear lawsuit against Media Matters. Elon Musk followed through on his vow to pursue a lawsuit against Media Matters after the liberal watchdog group issued a report that manufactured posts on X to place ads for major brands appeared next to anti-Semitic material. Musk's social media platform accused the watchdog group of essentially cooking the books in their quest to drive advertisers from their platform and destroy X Corp, according to the lawsuit filed Monday in federal court in Texas. The legal action comes as major companies like IBM, NBC, and its parent company Comcast said last week they're no longer running ads on the platform formerly known as Twitter, after Media Matters reported that their ads were appearing next to material that praised Nazism. What it appears is when looking at the data of how Media Matters put together their report is that they were intentionally seeking Nazi propaganda, outlandish propaganda, getting the algorithm to respond to them, and then spending enormous amounts of time in order to see an IBM ad right next to a tweet from some conspiratorial person or from a Nazi, and saying, this is what will happen when you advertise. You will be right next to some terrible racist garbage. And it was as Elon Musk claims, it was potentially a manufactured report, and people did run from this. And he just stood his ground. And he said later in the interview, if this works, it will take the company down. And everyone on earth will have to know that these are the companies who are so against free speech that they were willing to take Twitter completely out of the society. And that kind of missional clarity and missional conviction, while I don't necessarily agree with the language that he's using, that kind of missional conviction is something that we should pay attention to. The greatest test of missional conviction is financial pressure. And the financial pressure of all of these Fortune 500 companies pulling all of their money out of your platform and saying the only way they're coming back is if you change a core aspect of your mission in order to appease their interests. That is the greatest pressure you're going to face on whether or not you actually believe in your mission. And it should be commended that Elon Musk stands by his mission so strongly, he's actually willing to go down with the ship. And this is true in all different types of organizations. Almost everyone starts their business with some sense of mission. If your only mission is to make money, odds are you're not going to have a very successful business, because people are drawn to the mission of what goods or services you're offering them. That's pretty common business knowledge these days. What I do as the lead pastor of MetaChurch is I am a part of a mission that was set for me 2,000 years ago, that Jesus will give us the keys to the kingdom, and that we are to go to the ends of the earth with the good news of Jesus, even at great risk to ourselves. That we are to do whatever it takes to get Jesus to people and people to Jesus. That's what we are called to do. And yet, as someone who has worked in ministry for quite some time now, what you see again and again is that churches will compromise on convictions that they have about who they should be or how they should operate or how intentional they should be about reaching their community. They will compromise on that first and foremost because of financial pressure. And what happens is the largest givers, the people who write the biggest checks in the pews, the largest 5 or 10 people who support the offerings of the church, if they are uncomfortable, then you change course. If they don't like the new musical style, then you go back to the old. If they would rather sit in pews than interlocking chairs, then you continue to sit in pews. If they need you to continue wearing as a pastor, then you continue doing that, because the financial pressure, it is so overwhelming. And this can be true just in our personal lives as followers of Jesus, that, Jesus said, you have to choose one. You cannot serve both God and money. It just doesn't work that way. In 1 Timothy, Paul wrote, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." We can wander from the faith, and one of the biggest pressures in our life will be financial pressure. And what happens if what Jesus is calling you to and the Holy Spirit is convicting you of is not financially advantageous for you? What happens when you're caught between your faith and your finances? There's going to be no greater test of missional conviction, how on mission you actually are, how all in you actually are, than financial pressure. And as long as the church caters to those who write the biggest checks, we will fall short of the power that the movement is meant to have. In James, who is a half-brother of Jesus, chapter 2, he writes and says, "My brothers and sisters, do not show favoritism as you hold on to the faith in our glorious Lord Jesus. For if someone comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and dressed in fine clothes, and a poor person dressed in filthy clothes also comes in, if you look with favor on the one wearing the fine clothes and say, 'Sit here in a good place,' and yet you say to the poor person, 'Stand over there,' or 'Sit on the floor,' haven't you made distinctions amongst yourself and become judges with evil thoughts?" And we as Christians and we as the church should almost be convicted by Elon Musk's clarity of conviction about a social media platform, his clarity of conviction with SpaceX and Tesla, that he's saying, "I will lose money." He said that about Tesla. "I will lose money in order to do what I believe is the right thing." Now, am I saying that pastors should gather up all of their biggest givers and sit them down and then casually tell them to go F themselves? No. I think that's a bad idea, because that also would be off mission. And so I appreciate what Elon Musk did. It was a strong stance. If I'm completely honest, it was an amusing stance. It was very bold. I don't recommend that exact tact in your course of action, but we can learn something from that if the church is not going to have missional conviction and missional clarity, and if we're going to cater to whoever can fund the bottom line of our ministry at the highest dollar amount, then we will never fully experience the power that we were meant to have as the movement of Jesus, that not even the gates of hell can hold back. If you enjoyed this clip, make sure you check out the full podcast and subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all new content. You can also support the channel at patreon.com/Clayton Tyner. Link is in the description below.